All right, everyone. Thanks for joining session number 2 of our holiday series. In the first session, we talked about the official title for our first session was maximizing custom actions. And we went through and we built some custom actions together. We showed you how you can utilize services such as Cloudflare to do some more complicated custom actions and get information back. And so I really enjoyed that one. Today, we're going to be talking about building chats, and the official name for that is creating chat flows. When I say create chat flows, I will show you some basic concepts where you can just build a basic chat, just some tips and tricks if you want to do that. You can, but this is more so conversational chats where it feels like you're taking the user through a flow. I've found this can be very useful if you have a more complicated onboarding and you don't want someone to click through screens continually, or if you just need to get certain information from people. Sometimes just in a chat flow is really helpful. And full transparency, this was birthed out of an issue I had where I was flying and lost my luggage. And so I was talking to Delta, and this recording will be available after the call, and we'll put it up on YouTube and share some links. But yeah, my conversation with Delta led me to believe it was like, they're just asking me the same questions over and over. I bet I could build that in Adalo. And so I was able to. So let's build some things visually, and then I'll just talk through my process. And one thing I learned from the last call is I'm going to share the whole window. That way I'm not sharing the wrong tab. If you were here last time, that was quite funny to be building away and talking away and hearing nobody can see what you're doing, Kyle. So learning from me. All right, so let's start off. What I've done, just kind of as a preamp here, is at the bottom of Santa's Village, I now have a bottom nav where I just created a tab and link this to conversations. So probably pretty basic for most people, but this bottom nav is great. You can add different icons. You can name it whatever you want to, and it automatically shows up. And then you can link or have different actions. For our purposes right now, we're just going to have a link to a conversation screen. And then on my conversation screen, it's pretty bare right now, so I want to build this out with you. The first thing I like to do is go ahead and add a list, because if you look at your phone right now, if you have an iPhone or if you unfortunately have an Android, you would look, if you go into your messages portion of your app, you'll notice that the very first screen that you see is just a big list. Most of what you see within any app that's not like a video intensive app or a like gaming app or something like that, it's all driven by list. And so it's no different here in Adalo. So one thing we want to do to get started is we want to create a conversations list. And so to connect our list to something, it needs to connect to the database. And so let's add a new collection. And we click add the database, and we're going to add a collection. We're going to name this conversations. Let's add some properties. Let's give the conversation a name that seems to make sense. And since we are just doing, think of this as like a customer support conversation within Santa's Village app, we're not going to get into complications with chat or that you can do with chats of adding multiple users and that kind of thing in this particular video. But if we want, I can build a video for that later. So in the conversations, I'm going to add a user ID property. And then that way, if you remember from last time, I can add the logged in user to that conversation via just a number, and that number will reference the user ID. And what's great about that is every user will have an ID auto assigned to them that can't change. And so it's a quick way to filter for conversations. And then, so that is our conversation, and let's just build it over in the list so we can connect that to a conversation. I'm going to give our conversation a name, and we don't really need this part right now. And then one thing that people sometimes forget in list is when you arrive to this screen, there's really no call to action. You just see the list item. And for some people, that's really intuitive and you understand that, hey, I need to press. For other people, they need some kind of arrow or something telling them that there's something to click. And so what I tend to do is just make this pretty simple. I can go in and add an icon, and then for some reason, just this little arrow makes people think, oh, I can click there and I can go somewhere. What we'll do is we will direct them to our chat screen. So now we have our list. We're going to add a link to the chat screen. And if you notice, the data that's being sent over is our current conversation. And in that current conversation, we will have the name of the conversation, the user ID, who it belongs to, and now that conversation ID will be available here as well. And so we can start filtering there. So just something really basic for our conversation list. And we also want to add an option so users can create a new conversation. A couple different ways you can do that. I've seen people put plus signs up here. And most people, it's pretty universal that a plus sign means add. You can also add just a button, an action button here. You can make sure it's in your color scheme. And I'm going to change this to just make this green or teal or whatever color that is. And then we're going to create a new conversation. And from this new conversation, we're just going to name it the date, because if you've ever dealt with customer service before, you know that a lot of times those are arranged by date. So hopefully you don't have too many of them, but it does happen. And so I'm going to just do this date format. You can put it in whatever date format you want. That's not important necessarily. And then I'm going to grab that logged in user ID number. And when I click this button, I am now going to create a new conversation. Sometimes, and I struggle with this, I will create this new conversation. I will go in and test it. Here, I'm going to refresh. And I think I go ahead and press it and nothing happens. I'm like, well, what happened? I see it come up here, but the user experience, it would be a good idea just to go ahead and link to the chat screen to like take them somewhere. So if you ever run into that, just remind yourself, what does this button do? I need to give some kind of feedback to the user that something's happened. So for this, I'm going to create a conversation. I'm going to link to the chat screen. And if I refresh this, then you can already see that chats are coming up on my conversation list. I can click, and now I'm added to the chat. And so just so we don't get confused, what I'm going to do is with this name, not only with the date, I'm going to add in the time, so that we can know which particular conversation we're working with. And let's just change this formatting to just include the time here. Okay, and one other thing, if you're working with date and time, you can pull in multiple text here and try to make this as customized as you want. Maybe you want the month number here, whatever it is, that's completely up to you. And so we have now created our conversation list. And so now let's get into the meat and potatoes of why we're here to create the chat. And I'm going to just delete these so that we don't get confused by them. And we're going to click done. I'm going to refresh, and those should be gone now. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and create our first automated chat. What I'm going to do or attempt to do, and this could go great, or it could have some bugs, because that's what app building is sometimes. I'm going to create a chat where the first message that pops up asks the user or the person who's in the chat with our auto chat here what they want to do. And then based on the input that's received, we're going to kind of guide that message and get them to a certain place for that. The three things I want to be able to ask this particular user is I want them to be able to click, I want to view my order status, and I want to retrieve that order status and then show that in the messages. I'm going to give the user an opportunity to give a shout out to their customer service rep because that's always appreciated. And then I'm going to ask them if they want to initiate a return. And I'm not going to go into the weeds of all the mechanisms and all the ways you can branch off from this. So hopefully this just inspires. We're going to do it kind of like Amazon does their returns, where you go in, you say you want to return, they give it to you, and it's just kind of, you're done with it. So let's go in and start building. So when I'm building a chat, I want to make sure I have some strong I'll call them containers. We use them as rectangular. I use rectangles for containers, and that way I can have parameters for where everything's going to sit and reside. I do this because when I'm building, I'm going to be using a lot of visibility rules. And if I just have visibility rules just without the rectangle, the predictability of where they're going to end up or how it's going to look visually, it gets really complicated. So when I use this rectangle, and I'm just going to use this and just label this, and labeling here is going to be super important because we're going to be stacking and doing some visibility rules. And so you're going to want to know which component you're working with. So I'm going to name this message input background. And right now, eventually this will just be white, but for our purposes, so we know where everything is, I'm going to leave this as just the default color. And that'll make more sense in a few minutes. So now we've got a header up here. We have the ability for the user to go back to their conversations if they want to. And now we're giving a place where all of our input is going to reside. Just a quick tip, if you're building for multiple devices, I kind of like to leave, and I'll just do this, I kind of like to leave this much space at the bottom of my rectangle if I'm going to put anything inside of it for the swipe up bar, or that way when you're typing, you don't accidentally send a user out of the app. So I'm going to leave that here and just kind of get a visual feel for that. And I can even, if I want to, just put another rectangle in here, just kind of as my buffer. I can delete this later. Just a little tip and trick so you don't end up going too far down on your screen. Okay, so I've got my container that's going to house all of my input. Now I want to build the actual chat that you see. Think of the chat bubbles, and we're just going to start with a custom list. And so you can build custom lists several different ways. I always like to start off with a list, a clean list, and then I will stretch this rectangle really far down, and I'll show you why in a second. But now that just gives me a greater area to work with. And then this rectangle that is default within the chat acts like this rectangle does and just becomes like a container for me to put different elements in, and creates better predictability for my different scenarios or different things I'm going to be putting in. And then I can just go in and delete these texts. And then I'm going to label this background. This is the chat background. I'll put message chat so it doesn't get too confusing. Okay, so now I've got this container, and then this is where I can come in and start making my chat look more like a chat. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my rectangle. I'm going to be doing a lot of graphics and building first, and then we'll go in and get to the database part here. So this is going to be the rectangle that's going to house the messages for my, let's just call it, I'm going to call this, we can call this not logged in user. And just because I can't leave it lowercase, let's fix that. I'm going to leave this a little bit bigger because I'm going to be adding some things here. And then I'm going to go ahead and add another rectangle. I would recommend let's go ahead and just change these colors so we don't get super confused about what's being seen. And so we have that. So this is going to be the logged in user messages. I'm just clicking here. And what I'm building right now is not meant to be a replacement for iMessage or Google Chat or anything like that. This is for quick, light conversations that are not going to have 50 and 60 messages and that type of deal. Based on what your experience is and what you're using your chat for, you may want to build this a little bit differently. I just want to put that caveat in there. So now I've got my message chat background that's going to hold the messages that come through. I've got one for the logged in user, and I've got one for the not logged in user. And that way, think of it like you would on your chat app. You have the people who message you on the left and your messages on the right. And so let's just go ahead and start a new list, because we have a conversation list, and now we can just call this messages. Okay, and we can rename this property, and this is going to be the actual message. And we're going to have a number property here, and this is going to be sender ID. And instead of doing a relationship, I don't need this to ever change. So we're going to say sender name. This also makes your list lighter as well. It doesn't have to look and reference a relationship. And so now I can go in, I'm going to connect this list, make sure we have it here. And this is going to be the actual messages. What is this a list of? Well, this is a list of messages. And because we have sent the ID of the conversation over, we are going to say that we need to add that property. So the messages are going to belong to one conversation. So we're going to say conversation ID. So that looks good. So now we only want to see the conversation ID is equal to the current conversation's ID. So now we have those filtered out in a really efficient way with just the numbers. So let's just add in some text here. We're going to make this the current message, the sender's name, and then we can make this look, a little bit nicer here. We'll make that not as big. It's not as important as the actual message that comes through. So we're going to add in the current message. Okay, that looks good. And then let's do the same thing. I'm just copying and pasting here. We're going to put this in the not logged in user container. We're going to let's align this right so it feels like it would in a regular messaging system. And then, like I said, this one's not going to be as big because we're just going to get text input from the user, and we're going to add in some options here in just a moment. So that looks pretty good. The next thing that we would need to do is hide these based on visibility. So we're going to say we only want to see the not logged in user's information if that current message sender ID is not equal to the logged in user ID. And then we only want to see this one if the current message sender ID is equal to the logged in user ID. Because this is a list of messages. And I'm going to send a basic one here, and we'll continue designing here. But let's just do a basic chat, and you'll see what I mean. And to do a basic chat, you'll need a text input. So grab that, and then you can enter text. You can do multiple lines. We'll allow multiple lines for this for now. And we'll label this message input. And let's get a send button here. I'm actually going to do a button here, and I'll show you why in just a moment. Buttons have 3 different states. So that then allows me to send this, of course, but I can also create a state, and I'll do this here, where the input is empty, because you don't want people sending messages without, in my particular case, you don't want them to send anything if this is empty. So we will just send this to a different state. And instead of making it prominent, we'll make it a text button. And then we'll just make it a light gray. But when people start typing in, they'll be able to see this particular button show up more prominently. And then we're going to create a new message. And our message is going to be from our message input. Our sender ID is going to be the logged in user ID. The sender name is going to be the logged in user name. And then our conversation is going to be the current conversation ID. And so now we've just created a really basic chat. And let's go here to refresh. Let's go into this conversation. And so I can type hello, and then you'll see the button change to let me know I can press that. So I can press that button now. And if you notice, nothing really came up very well. So let's take a look and see what happened. First of all, let's do this sticky while scrolling. And let's see, so make sure I have these set up correctly. Sometimes visible is equal to logged in user ID, sender ID. And then let's click here is not equal to logged in user ID. Let's check our messages. What do we have? We have sender ID, we have conversation ID. Let's troubleshoot and figure out why this is not working. Let's do reverse scroll here as well. Reverse scroll allows it to scroll up like it would be a message here. So we have that input come in, and let's just take these visibilities off really quick. And so, okay, so there's our message. So now we just have to troubleshoot why that didn't show as expected. So let's see, message chat background, message chat background. What I'm doing is checking to make sure that this particular rectangle didn't end up inside of that rectangle, so that the visibility rule doesn't apply to both of them. So let me check out that screen tree. So the shape doesn't have anything there, so that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this is not the logged in. So sometimes if current message sender ID is not equal to logged in user ID, and then we're going to say sometimes if the current message sender ID is equal to logged in user ID. Let's refresh and see that again. There we go. Okay, so now that's fixed. Sometimes if you run into an issue, just redo it. I'm going to assume I clicked the wrong ID. I may have said message ID on one of these instead of the sender ID. So that's why that happened. So I'm going to slide this down a little bit. And this is one thing we're going to be working on, but we want to have that message go all the way down. So so now we have that. Then I can send another message, hello to. And you can see one thing we want to tweak really quick is just the order of how this comes in. When you do the sorting, you can do created date. That's something that's already done for you. And let's try oldest to newest, and let's see which one comes up next. There we go, hello 2, and then we can do hello 3. All right, so that is just the basic of chat. Let's start building something that's a little bit more complicated and more robust. One thing I do when I'm building this is think of it as frameworks, and within each framework, you can add parameters. I like to use number properties because it's a lot easier to do visibility rules. It's either equal to that number or it's not equal to that number. And then also, if it gets really complicated for some of the onboarding that I've done in other apps, I will use Google Sheets, and I will just begin to create CSVs and upload this because sometimes working in collections is not always the smoothest in Adalo. We understand this. We will be working on it. But for now, I'd like to create it here and then import it into the collections via CSV. All right, so let's build the portion where people can get their status order from this automated chat. So I'm going to raise this up a little bit. That original background, I'm going to leave this here. And I am going to add a property to this message. And I'm going to add, let's do input type and order. And that'll make more sense in just a minute. But I have input type. And we're going to do an order. Okay, so the reason I did an input type is because we're going to be asking the user some different questions about what kind of route they want to go. We will put different rectangles inside of here and use visibility rules. And we're going to reference that input type, and input type is going to be certain things such as, is this just a text input? And if that is the case, we'll just allow the text input to show. Is this going to be a multiple choice where they can click some different buttons? Or at the end of this, I'm just going to have us start a new conversation. I'm not going to build something today that's going to go on forever. The other thing you can do instead of building these chat flows, depending on your use case, is you can even go in here and when you create a message, you could have you could connect to AI and do like a chat GPT and give them the previous message and the history, and then have them do a message. There's a lot of different ways you can do chats. It's really fun. All right. So because we're going to ask the users the same questions over and over, I like to name this template message. And the first question we're going to ask every single user is, or we're going to tell them is, "Hi, welcome to Santa's Village." We're just going to be, nice with our customer service here. So let's go ahead and just create this. And then we're going to add some properties here. And I'm going to do the current message. We're going to name that. We're going to need an order. And the order gets important because we may need to reference the chat that we just created. And then we're going to do update property. And this is just a text property. Input type. And then let's do a multiple choice option. And then let's go in and we're going to do next message order. Next message. This allows you to tell the user where they're going to go next within the property. And that should be a number property. And we can do this template because we know where we want to send the user in the flow based on what they tell us. And we're only going to give them a few different parameters for that. I believe that is a text one as well. Okay. And then we're going to do option. Okay. Okay, I know I just threw a lot at you, but we'll walk through it as we build it together. So we have our template message here, and what we're going to do is add another number property to the logged in user. And this is going to say template order. Because if you remember, we just added a template message and we added a number property for order. This is going to allow us to reference which template and where we're at within our message flow. So what I'm going to do is when we create a new conversation, I'm going to add an update to the logged in user. And I'm going to say, what template order are we at? We're starting at 0. We're starting fresh, so we're going to say 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a message. And the sender ID, we're just going to leave blank. The sender name, we're going to say Santa's Helpers. The conversation is going to be pulled from our new conversation ID. And then let's reference this. So we're going to say this is a text property. We're going to say, we'll just type that in. It's going to be a input type. Sorry, that is a number field. That's why I can't do that. And then the order we have is 1. So we're going to say input, and I'm just going to kind of create a key here. So 1 is going to be text, 2 is going to be multiple choice, and then 3 is going to be start new. This is going to feel like you're mapping a lot, but keep in mind we want to send the user to a certain place. So sender ID and the message we're going to send is, "Hi, welcome to Santa's Village. What is your name?" Okay, so now when we come here, this is going to feel a little bit different. So I'm going to refresh and we're going to get a new conversation started. We're going to create a conversation. This conversation is going to get an ID. It's going to get the logged in user ID. We're going to update the user with the template order that we want. We're going to create a message, and that message is going to say, "Hi, welcome to Santa's Village. Please confirm your name." And then we're going to do this, and okay, let's just see what happens. So now let's refresh. So I have a new chat. So it says, "Hi, welcome to Santa's Village. Please confirm your name." And if you notice, this is in a different color because we have we've set it to, if we didn't send it, then we can it would be on the left hand side. So now I can say, hi, my name, or what is your name? My name is Kyle. So I can click here. So now I have just answered an automated question, which is great, but now I need to go somewhere with that message as well. So I just confirmed my name is Kyle. Now let's start routing and mapping. And this is where it can get complicated. So just stay with me for a second. So I'm going to make this button, I'm going to make this into a list. You notice this is not a list within a list, it's just a list within our container. And I'm going to say, what is this a list of? I'm going to say this is a list of a template message, and I want the order that is equal to the logged in user's template order. And if you remember, when we started this conversation, we created the conversation, we created the message, and we said the template order is currently 1. I'm going to download this really quick so that we have that ready to go. I'm going to say, I'm just going to input all these. Okay, so those should all be in line. So now I've got this template set up, and I don't need these. Just keep some data clean here. So now I have the order here, which didn't, let me double check. So the order didn't pop over. So let me just delete that CSV and do it again. Okay, so the holiday chat. So we want to make sure that CSV order, property, order. I think we had 2 orders here for some reason. Okay, let's do that now. Okay, those numbers are super important. So we want to make sure we have that correct. Okay, so we have our templates in now. And like I said, you can build this in Google Sheets or Excel, whatever you want to do. And it's just easier to import for me right now. So I've got a list. And so I've got the order is equal to template order. So now if you look at the template message, you'll see that order number 1 is this particular template. And then the next message is, what can I help you with? And the next order is 2. So now what I can do when I click this button, I can create 2 messages. So I'm going to create another message and say, I'm going to leave the sender name, the sender ID empty, but I'm going to say sender's name is Santa's helper. I'm going to do the current conversation ID. And then the message I'm going to choose is the current template. I'm going to do the next message. And then the input type, I'm going to do current template. The next, we're going to do order here. The next order. And then input type, I think I need to change that in my template because I have that as text. That should be fine for now. And what I can do now is then I'm going to update the logged in user and say, what's the next template order? Well, it's the next order from my template that I just did. And let's go back and take a look at what happens now. So I am here. My name is Kyle. I'm going to start a new conversation so we get the full effect here. Please confirm your name. My name is Kyle. That allows me to click here. I'm going to click. My name's Kyle. And then we have another question with, what can I help you with? So after I respond and give them my answer, I then have a response from my automated message. Again, it's just a map and it's taking you different places. And now I can interact. And so we talked about giving them a few different options. So what can I help you with? And this is where the input becomes important. So we say next input type, and we're going to do on the template message. And on the message, I'm going to change this here. So this is what I need to adjust this. I need to do, we did it text property, so we need to do input type. And then on this, we need to make sure we have, when we create this message, we're going to say this is text. And then, so that message is fine. And then when we go to send the next message to keep our flow going, we want to grab our input type, which is next input type. And so now I'm going to create another rectangle inside of here. So this is going to be my, we're going to call this, let's start this out, just say guide background. Because we gave them an option of, we will let them view order status. And we'll close out of that. I don't need that. And I'm not going to get caught up too much in the formatting of everything. So we're going to do view order status. And again, I'm putting this inside of the guide background. So we're view order status. And then the last one we're going to do is return. So we have view order status, and then we have give a shout out. I don't know if shout out's 1 or 2 words. It'll be 1 this time. And then we're going to start return, which make all of these in there. Let's distribute them a little bit. And now let's refresh. Okay, so now those are showing up, but we don't need them in each of the messages from Santa's helper. We only want them in this particular one. So this is where our input comes in. And from this particular message, we can drill down here. We can get our guide background and set some visibility. We can say only if the current message input type is equal to, and I believe the second one here is going to be, what can I help you with, is, let's say MC. Just double check our messages. What can I help you with? Input type wasn't captured because we just made that change, but I'm going to put, let's actually just put start. I'm going to make that change in the template. That way this only shows up on the start. We don't need it for all of them. And the input type is start. And then here, what is the next one? Is start. Okay, so I've changed the message. I'm just kind of doing this on the background to expedite things, but I can go in and say, don't show the guide background every time, only show it if input type is equal to start. So now when I refresh, you can see confirm your name, what's your name, and then what can I help you with? So now these buttons are here, and now I can start guiding the user into different flows. So I can, and let's do view order status first, and I'll try to go quickly because we're running out of time. Hopefully you're getting the gist of just creating a flow for template. So let's see, guide, and then this is where naming thing, of course. So view order status. And we're going to do give shout out. And we're going to start return. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is view order status. And if you look at our Google Sheet, I've got this set up where if we want to do the order status, we want to ask them what is the order number, and that particular order is template is 3. So let's go, we can just then create messages here. So we can do create a message, and this is going to be from Santa's helper. This is going to be the order ID. I'm sorry, the conversation ID is the current conversation's ID. The order is 3, and then the input type that we have for the order number is the status. We want to learn how to learn that status number. And let's see, so that is taken care of there. And then what that allows me to do is this template, this send button is going to change. And I still want to see this, so that works. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh. And do we put a message on there? We want to make sure we can visually see something there. View status, and the message is, nope, we did not add a message, so let's do that. And so we can ask them what the order number is. Let's refresh. So we're going to view, I want to view my order status, and then what is the order number? So then I can input an order number here and click this button. And now I have that. So let's double check. We need to update the logged in user. The reason why it asks the same question is because I did not tell them which order number I wanted to be at for that template. So let's refresh. I'm going to delete that last message. And so what it should pull up now is, if you notice, this is 3. So we can, the next message should be, what is the current order status? So I'm going to delete my last message here. What is the order number? Put in a number. And this is where you can get creative. So for the order status, you may want to have another box here, or take this list and say the current. You could do something similar to like have another rectangle in here for just the order status. And you could do the VLOOKUP based on what we said before. And what you may want to do, I think, and I've done this before, is not only get the template ID, but then you could do input type and update that as well. So if someone clicks view order status, you can update the user with what order it is, and then we can reference it's a status, so we could have status. And we can have this same list, so we can still do the same thing. But instead of just creating the next message, we can also do a VLOOKUP like we did on the other one. And I'm just going to just grab that custom action. So updating a list. I can grab a custom action, so I can do that VLOOKUP, and then I can actually update the status, because then I can grab what that status of that ID is for this number. So just something there. And then we can do the same thing for give a shout out, and we're running short on time, but what I'm hoping that you get is, because we know what the order is and where we want to direct the user, we can start setting parameters and start using properties in the logged in user property to make changes. So we can, I'm going to take this and make sure I'm not in list 2. Let's see. So we're here. I can say message input background, list 2. I can pull that shape out of there. And now I can have different inputs based on what the logged in user status is supposed to say. So input type, we're gonna, so that bounced and was bigger because it was inside of a list, which was its bounding box, and then I took it out of it. That's why that happens if you're ever building. You just have to readjust it. So now when I click view order status, I'm going to delete these messages so I can just show that. So we're going to take this out. What is the order number? What can I help you with? We're going to take all those out. And we're going to refresh. Okay, so what can I help you with? And you would do colors that wouldn't clash, where you wouldn't see that, obviously, but you can view order status. And now if I do order number, let's make sure the logged in user got status, and make sure I spelled that correctly. So we have is equal to, that's why that didn't show up. So now I can program the status button to do whatever I want it to do. So I can do, what is the order number? I'm just going to click here. It may break because I put that in action there. So current status is this. And then you can program it to say, start a new conversation because that was all that it was done, or give them options. You can say, what else can I help you with? And let's do the give a shout out just to show that you can do different things. For the give a shout out, you may want to just do that. Let's just click give a shout out. Let's just create a message. I'm going to create another message. I'm going to say, who is, I do, what was your helper's name? We're going to say Santa's helper. Conversation ID. Is that one? The order, what order is that? The order is 4. You can think of order as like an ID for this particular message that you preset. So we're going to create a message, and then we're going to update the logged in user. And we're going to say the template order is 4, input type is text. So now we can go back here, and we're going to give a shout out. What is your helper's name? John is the helper's name. And then we can have a separate flow. We can then create another rectangle. And the next question was, how did they help you? They taught me Adalo. And so now I'm still within that flow. It says, well, it should say thank you. It says thank you. Have a great day. But that was based on my template. And if I need to change that template, I can just go in and click here. And then the next person who has that same conversation will be able to see thank you instead of thank you. So where this gets really fun and really can be dynamic is I have taken the time sometimes to put in properties here in the template for this update property. And what that allows me to do is if I want to reference a particular property and update that, let's say you're building a onboarding and you needed to update the logged in user's name, instead of having 5 or 6 different actions based on what you want to update, you can just do a custom action, and you can reference the Adalo API. And when you're building that custom action, you can choose the property to be a magic text. And so then you can pull the property you want to update from the template and then update that with the input that you provided here. That is a really powerful tool because then you can eliminate actions and just update that information. That's all the time that we have for today. I know I flew through a lot, but hopefully you can see that you can build chats, especially if you have the roadmap and the flow that you want it to go. And hopefully you join us for our next meeting, which will be on December 17th. Last time I said November, that was wrong. We're going to be in December 17th. And we're going to show you how to create scheduling notifications and how to display those so people can go in and edit them if they need to, and just how to do that in a clean way. And so hopefully you'll join us on the 17th, and hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon. Bye.